Internal government documents from China reveal why the regime is refusing to be transparent about the origin of the virus. Over 8,000 people quarantined in 3 northeastern Chinese provinces, 4.4 million people impacted by lockdown measures. A Chinese social media app exploding in popularity during the pandemic. Today, we look at how the Chinese Communist Party uses it as a propaganda tool outside of China. The Chinese regime threatens retaliation after the Trump administration closes off a loophole that allowed Huawei to get around U.S. trade restrictions. And a 21-year-old Hong Kong lifeguard becomes the first anti-government protester to plead guilty to rioting during last year's pro-democracy protests. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Internal government documents obtained by NTD show the communist regime is using the excuse of protecting state secrets to prevent virus information from getting to the outside world. A February 13th notice from Nanning Municipal Government tells all authorities to resolutely prevent the loss of confidential information during the epidemic prevention and control period. So what is confidential information? The regime says it refers to all kinds of emergency documents, emergency communications, and emergency events. It adds internal sensitive information must first be approved by relevant authorities before being disclosed to the public. The whole world is looking for more information on the virus, but under the internal government notice, this information is a state secret and cannot be disclosed. The notice goes on to forbid anyone from distributing such information through digital channels like email or WeChat. It also forbids mentioning state secrets through phone calls and text messages or while at home. It's also forbidden to copy or scan sensitive documents outside the office. The notice also states the secret carriers, like computers or documents, must be managed by dedicated personnel. Media interviews are also forbidden without getting approval first. It's been 4 days since Wuhan began its 10-day initiative to test all 11 million residents. One angry resident reportedly called the mayor's hotline and called the entire initiative nuts. On a video uploaded to YouTube, she says that so many people gathering in one place is ridiculous.
Do you know that we don't normally go out? Then you suddenly asked us all to go out, get together and line up since 8 a.m. And we still couldn't get tested. We've been waiting for 3 hours. Our kid hadn't been out for a few months. Now our kid has to get tested too. What on earth are you thinking?
She believes the way the testing is carried out makes cross-infection very possible.
During the testing process, you have to take off your mask and open your mouth. With so many people to see to, how can the medical staff have time to change gloves and disinfect? People there are coughing and sneezing. The air is contaminated. How can you clean the area so quickly?
She says the whole thing is nuts.
You didn't even consider these problems and just ask more than 10 million people to do this test. I call it nuts. You're recording, right? Tell the relevant departments that I call the decision nuts.
And it's not just this incident. Her and her friends say the authorities are completely incapable. According to official figures, over 8,000 people are now quarantined due to China's 3 northeastern provinces. Jilin City is the first big city in China to be put under lockdown again since people went back to work. The city has a population of 4.4 million. All trains and bus routes out of the city are suspended. Schools are closed again. If someone talks about the outbreak on WeChat, the post will be deleted immediately and the account could be suspended. The European Union has suspended the delivery of 10 million masks from China to member states in the UK. A first batch of 1.5 million masks was already delivered to 17 EU member states and the UK. Poland said the 600,000 items it received have neither European certificates nor comply with medical standards. The Netherlands reported similar problems. The EU said if necessary, it will take legal action where necessary. The CIA believes China blocked the WHO from declaring a global health emergency on the virus crisis in January, while hoarding medical supplies from the rest of the world. That's according to Newsweek, who got confirmation from two intelligence officials. The report, UN China, WHO mindful but not beholden to China, says Beijing threatened not to cooperate with the WHO's virus investigation if the UN Health Agency declared a global health emergency. The report does not say if Chinese leader Xi Jinping was personally involved in pressuring the WHO. This comes as German media Der Spiegel published a report by German intelligence officials saying Xi was involved. The WHO denies Xi Jinping's involvement but did not respond to the allegations against Beijing attempting to delay the global emergency. A social media platform from China has become hugely popular as a way to share videos during lockdown. But that might not be all it does. The app could be used as a tool of the Chinese Communist Party to spread its propaganda beyond China. NTD Xiwen Rong has more.
One Chinese video sharing platform exploded as one of the most popular social media platforms amid the pandemic. TikTok and its Chinese counterpart Douyin have been installed by 2 billion users around the world, including 165 million in the US. Douyin is only available to audiences in mainland China. State media praised it as an effective way to spread the regime's narrative. For example, since the Hong Kong protests last year, dominant topics on the platform include news that supports the Chinese regime and Hong Kong police. Posts from various Chinese state media praising the Hong Kong police received tens of millions of likes. In 2019, China's police agency signed a contract with TikTok's parent company ByteDance to train the police on how to spread their propaganda on social media. The Chinese regime is also using the platform during the pandemic to spread its narrative and promote mask diplomacy in an effort to hide its guilt and expand its international influence. Multiple Chinese state-run media have been propagating the claim that the US military brought the virus to China. The news spread on Douyin and received over 6 million likes. Videos about the virus starting in Wuhan are rarely seen on the platform. Other videos spread across state-run social media accounts mostly slandered the United States and other countries using misinformation about the way they're handling the virus. But videos that go against the communist regime's narrative are hard to find. TikTok and Douyin spread quickly in China and overseas. TikTok closely resembles its Chinese counterpart, bringing Chinese-style censorship to mainstream US audiences. For example, the Wuhan hashtag on TikTok has more than 240 million views, but it mainly shows videos promoting the Chinese regime's narratives and propaganda. And these kinds of videos are hard to find. App experts told the Washington Post TikTok could become a formidable part of the way Americans get information online. And researchers say they're worried the app could become one of China's most effective weapons in the global information war. TikTok has been reportedly under federal investigation since it became popular in the US. But despite privacy and censorship concerns from the US government, the app has surged in popularity during the pandemic.
The Trump administration is closing a loophole that allows China's Huawei to get around U.S. trade restrictions and get its hands on advanced U.S. technology. The Chinese regime is angry and is threatening retaliation.
The Chinese regime is threatening retaliation after the U.S. closed a loophole, one that allowed Huawei to sidestep U.S. export controls and buy semiconductors from global chip makers. Last year, the Trump administration put restrictions on U.S. companies selling to Huawei. The president didn't want advanced U.S. technology powering the Chinese military, which Huawei is linked to. But the telecom giant found a way around the rule. Instead of buying directly from U.S. companies, it would just buy from overseas manufacturers who are licensed to use U.S. technology in their chips. That won't be so easy anymore, though. All global chip makers will need to obtain a U.S. license before selling to Huawei, and most manufacturers rely on equipment produced by U.S. companies. So China's not happy. It's threatening to cause trouble for U.S. companies like Apple, Cisco, and Boeing. Huawei needs semiconductors for its smartphones. It's now the second largest manufacturer in the world. It also needs the chips to power its 5G ambitions. President Trump, though, has been telling allies to exclude Huawei gear from their 5G networks because its equipment could be used by China for spying. The new restrictions come amid heightened tensions between Washington and Beijing, triggered by what the U.S. calls the regime's mishandling of the pandemic.
A 21-year-old Hong Kong lifeguard, the first anti-government protester to plead guilty to rioting during last year's unrest, was sentenced to 4 years in jail today.
Sin Kai-ho was among thousands who surrounded the Legislative Council on June 12 last year, in a bid to stop legislators from giving a second reading to a since-withdrawn bill that would have allowed extraditions to mainland China. A few dozen protesters, many wearing black and holding a banner reading, "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times," gathered outside the court, chanting, "There's no riot, only tyranny."
Our fellow protesters didn't come out for themselves, and he came out for Hong Kong. He didn't do anything wrong. So why was the sentencing so harsh? It's not reasonable, because there's a problem with society and the entire system. And the young people gave us a lot and sacrificed a lot.
As Sin was driven away in a van, some protesters knocked on the windows and shouted, "Stay strong."
I think even a day is too long for them. Why? Because there's a problem with society and the entire system. And the young people gave us a lot and sacrificed a lot.
The only person so far to plead guilty, Sin admitted to pushing police barricades and hurling umbrellas at officers. More than 8,300 protesters were arrested between June 2019 and mid-May this year. Over 1,600 have been prosecuted and 595 face rioting charges.
The world's largest chipmaker, Taiwan Semiconductor, will build a factory in the U.S. It's a win for the Trump administration in its efforts to wrestle supply chains away from China. The build will bolster national security and create 1,600 new jobs. The U.S. has secured a win as it wrestles supply chains back from China. Taiwan Semiconductor, the world's largest chipmaker, will build a $12 billion factory in Arizona, creating 1,600 jobs over 9 years. The company also plans to bring its 8 key suppliers with them. It will produce state-of-the-art 5mm chips. The chips are used in key areas of national security like artificial intelligence, 5G base stations, and even F-35 fighter jets. The vast majority of the world's most advanced chips are made in Asia. This has caused concern among U.S. officials as a strategic rivalry with China deepens. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo writing on Twitter today that this deal bolsters U.S. national security at a time when China is trying to dominate cutting-edge tech and control critical industries. He also said the deal strengthens America's relationship with Taiwan, calling it a vibrant democracy and force for good in the world. Taiwan is a self-ruling island off the coast of China. The Chinese Communist Party has vowed to annex it and make it part of the mainland. Construction of the Arizona facility is set to begin in 2021, with production targeted to start in 2024. People may be able to get their hands on a CCP virus vaccine in record time through Operation Warp Speed. The chief scientist of the program says he's confident they'll be able to deliver a few 100 million doses by the end of the year.
The chief scientist of Operation Warp Speed gave an optimistic speech on Friday, saying he felt confident that a vaccine would make it to the public this year.
In fact, Mr. President, I have very recently seen early data from a clinical trial with a coronavirus vaccine. And these data made me feel even more confident that we will be able to deliver a few 100 million doses of vaccine by the end of 2020.
The doctor sits on the board of Moderna, a U.S. company that's testing a possible CCP virus vaccine. Out of 100 candidates, President Trump said government experts selected 14 they believe have the best chance at succeeding. And they will be manufactured even as they undergo clinical trials.
It's expensive, but we'll be saving massive amounts of time. We'll be saving years if we do this properly, and that's what we're doing. So we're gearing up on the assumption that we'll have, in the near future, relatively near future, a vaccine.
Health Secretary Alex Azar backed up Slowy, calling him arguably the world's most experienced and successful vaccine developer. Vaccines often take 10 to 15 years to be developed, so if all goes well, the CCP virus vaccine could be finished in a remarkable 1 year.
And New York is starting to open up again. Governor Cuomo announced on Friday that some regions have the green light. People can even visit some of the area's beaches now.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced today that 5 of New York's 10 regions are opening up. The rest of the state, including New York City, will remain on pause until at least May 28th. But New York will join its neighboring states in opening beaches for Memorial Day weekend.
The agreement is New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware will all be opening beaches for the Memorial Day weekend.
That means New Yorkers won't have to travel to neighboring states and can enjoy the beaches close to home this weekend. But social distancing will remain mandatory for beachgoers. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said on Friday that from now on the NYPD won't focus on disrupting small gatherings anymore. Instead, they'll center their efforts on helping the people by handing out face masks, for example.
But we're not going to have the NYPD focused on, 2 people together or 3 people together. We're going to focus on when it starts to be more than a handful of people.
But he said the NYPD works to protect and save lives, adding that big gatherings pose a big risk to those who are most vulnerable.
Governor Cuomo extends New York's stay-at-home order until June 13th, but he allows some regions to start reopening with certain safety guidelines in place.
Governor Cuomo extended New York's stay-at-home order until June 13th. That's an extension of the May 15th date he set earlier. But regions that have met the criteria can start to reopen now.
Right now, by the criteria that we have, which is basically from the federal CDC, we have certain regions that are poised to reopen tomorrow. Other regions where the numbers do not suggest they're in a position to reopen.
Cuomo will reopen Central New York, the Mohawk Valley, the Finger Lakes, the North Country, and the Southern Tier. But New York City, its surrounding suburbs, and its nearby counties have yet to meet the state's criteria. Cuomo says the businesses that reopen have to strictly follow designated safety guidelines.
And the guidelines are quite specific: social distancing, curbside pickup, in-store pickup. If you're a manufacturing facility, 6 feet, PPE provide to employees, etc.
In order to fight the spread of the virus, New York City extended measures. 12 additional miles of streets were closed on Thursday to encourage people to practice social distancing as warmer weather arrives.
So I've been pretty much on foot. I just walked all the way down to 96 to get to Whole Foods. So it's been kind of interesting to navigate the city that way.
The city had previously closed 9 miles of streets. That makes a total of 21 miles of streets, now closed part-time.
Tension continues to build about how and when to reopen states. Just about all 50 states have started their statewide reopening plans, but some aren't there yet, and governors are facing pushback from all angles. NTD's Melina Weisskopf spoke to an official who is defying his governor's orders.
Pennsylvania has seen fewer cases over the past 14 days, in line with federal reopening guidelines. Still, the state governor is enforcing strict restrictions in some areas, but some are moving forward anyway.
We prefer to work in cooperation with the governor, but we intend to move forward with a plan to restore Lancaster County.
He says Lancaster County has a comprehensive plan, including testing all nursing home residents and staff, and watching the hospital capacity closely. So far, they've only used around 20 of the 170 ventilators they have. Still, the county is locked down, and the economic impact has been devastating. Parsons says there must be a middle way.
And, we want a balance between, the health aspects and taking care of vulnerable people, but also having the personal freedom to get back to work and support our families.
A county close by has similar wishes. York County has the go-ahead to partly reopen starting next Friday, but personal care and entertainment still have to stay closed. Some businesses are reopening anyways.
We're following all the guidelines, This is how you get back. Squash the fear, The fear has consumed us all.
And their county commissioner says the people can handle it well.
We will survive this crisis with compassion, wisdom, humility, and the understanding that we are all imperfect, but we all strive to accomplish the greatest of good for each other and our Commonwealth.
Earlier this week, the governor threatened to withhold federal funding from the counties who don't comply with his order to stay closed. As Trump visited a warehouse there yesterday, he expressed his concern about the matter.
You have areas of Pennsylvania that are barely affected, and they want to keep them closed. Can't do that.
Meanwhile, Governor Wolf says his reopening plan is gradual and prioritizes public safety. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And the Pennsylvania governor is taking a similar stance towards restaurants as California, saying they can face losing their liquor license if they don't comply with the timing of his reopening plan. And there's new guidance for schools and workplaces on how to reopen safely. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued 6 pages of considerations and checklists designed to help during the process.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released guidance on Thursday to help schools and childcare centers safely reopen. They also cover workplaces, camps, mass transit systems, as well as bars and restaurants. The guidance is laid out as a decision tree, offering yes or no scenarios that in most cases lead to one of 3 outcomes: open and monitor, do not open, or meet safeguards first. The CDC document is also meant to help business owners develop policies. It advises the wearing of masks to work in most cases, as is already recommended in enclosed public spaces. It also encourages business owners to coordinate with state and local health officials when making decisions about safety. This latest guidance relates to another earlier set of guidelines released by the Trump administration on April 17th. President Trump said at the time that governors would be empowered to tailor an approach suitable for the individual needs of their state. The CDC said it may issue more guidance as needed to help states as they start to reopen businesses.
A cluster of cases of a rare inflammatory syndrome has surfaced in New York. The link between this illness and the CCP virus is unproven. Yet many headlines and newscasts have pushed it into the limelight. Our reporter Kevin Hogan speaks with a psychologist about the anxiety it's causing some parents.
A rare inflammatory illness is affecting young people in the state of New York. 3 have died in the state, and a 9-year-old boy has passed from the illness in Marseille, France. There is no conclusive evidence that the CCP virus, which causes COVID-19, leads to this rare syndrome, yet several media companies bring this potential link to the forefront of their reporting. Psychologist Dr. Reiner sheds light on how this is affecting some parents.
There's been a lot of media attention about this new inflammatory disease noted in kids. Parents' anxiety level is already jacked up pretty high, and this is just one more thing to worry about.
Several headlines are mixing this illness with COVID, but scientists tell us they are only potentially related. For example, a headline from Reuters on Wednesday reads, U.S. to tell doctors to report cases of COVID-19 inflammatory syndrome in kids. But at the end of the article, it states that scientists are still trying to determine whether the syndrome is linked with the new coronavirus because not all children with it have tested positive for the virus. It's not clear why the article's title assumes COVID is the cause, because the body of the article says the cause is uncertain. Dr. Reiner says reporting like this may lead to more anxiety.
And then you read the fine print, in this case the article, and you find out that, well, no, there's really no relationship. Well, one of the implications is they'll sell more newspapers. The other one is, unfortunately, that will escalate people's already high levels of anxiety.
Curiously, NBC also jumped to conclusions about the causal relationship between COVID and the childhood affliction.
The number of new coronavirus cases overall may be going down, but the number of children known to be developing a dangerous response to COVID-19 appears to be going up.
According to experts, media activity like this can directly affect doctors and their patients. In the journal Hospital Pediatrics, Kawasaki disease, called KD, which is what this inflammatory syndrome is similar to, can be an ambiguous diagnosis in the first place. The medical journal goes on to say that heightened awareness from all the recent media attention might trigger an increase in KD diagnoses in patients who previously would not have been diagnosed.
Certainly when something's in the media and people's anxiety levels are jacked up the way they are right now, yeah, these kind of overdiagnosing certain symptoms are going to occur all the time.
Dr. Reiner says this is something we need to watch out for. He thinks the nature of science should be healthy skepticism. Kevin Hogan, NTD News, New York.
And Slovenia is the first European country to declare an end to the epidemic, while Norway is likely to keep travel restrictions until August.
The Slovenian government has announced an official end to its virus pandemic. Authorities confirmed less than 7 new virus cases each day for the past 2 weeks. The decision makes it the first European country to bring an end to the health crisis, even though it's a direct neighbour to hard-hit Italy. Norway, on the other hand, will likely maintain travel restrictions until August 20th. But the government may decide to loosen some restrictions earlier. Travel between other Nordic countries may be allowed by mid-June, while travellers from other European countries may be allowed to enter by late July. Brazilian Health Minister Nelson Teich resigned on Friday after just weeks on the job. Nelson Teich is the second health minister to resign amid the pandemic in Brazil. Last week he said he was not consulted before President Bolsonaro issued a partial reopening for some of the country's businesses. And some 250 medical workers performed a flash mob synchronized dance in the Belgian city of Liège on Friday. Participants decided to perform the dance to raise awareness about their difficult working conditions and the government's virus response.
U.S. retail sales experienced record declines for the second straight months as CCP virus worries continue to keep Americans at home. But online merchants report an increase in sales. Here are today's business briefs.
U.S. retail sales endured a second straight month of record declines in April as the CCP virus pandemic kept Americans at home. Retail sales plunged 16.4% last month, the biggest decline since the government started tracking the series in 1992. But online merchants report an increase in receipts. They saw sales jump 8.4%. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow floated the idea of cutting the corporate tax rate in half for U.S. companies who bring their operations back from other countries. He wants to drop the rate from 21% to 10.5%. Kudlow says it's just an idea right now, but that it would make the country more inviting to investors and more competitive in the marketplace. As Israel's economy slowly returns to normal with the easing of its lockdown, the once vibrant diamond exchange floor in Tel Aviv remains shut. The city's diamond district is one of the world's main trade and polishing centers. It's deserted under the virus pandemic, and the diamond sector has lost about $300 million in profit. As an alternative to in-person sales, the World Federation of Diamond Bourses launched a not-for-profit website called Get Diamonds. It now has an inventory of $5.5 billion in diamonds, which it says is the biggest in the world.
Months after the beginning of the outbreak, France's healthcare staff still lack masks. But one clever 14-year-old has found a way to help. Our France correspondent David Vives has the story.
It looks more like a factory than a teenager's room. This is where Romeo Estezet does his part to help the healthcare workers of Paris.
There are 4 printers. The one I've had for my mom since 6th grade, the one I borrowed from a high school, one that belongs to my friend, and one we could afford to buy with money from donations.
A few years ago, Romeo started to build a car. When he heard the hospitals lack masks, he thought he might be able to help. He searched for a template for protective visors online and started printing.
The printer's head melts polylactic acid filaments and it goes in the printers that print multiple layers. It's the same as 2D printers.
A transparent sheet, and a few tweaks later,
we make the head holders, then we clip this, et voilà. 3D printing is my passion. At first my mom said, "But what are you going to do with that?" Now she's changed her mind.
And in the living room, the communications office with Romeo's mum.
I can barely turn a machine on and off. Technical parts are for Romeo. I'm supervising all orders coming in.
As soon as the first visors were given away, the orders never stopped coming in. Hospitals, drugstores, bakeries, teachers and healthcare workers from Paris ask him for visors. He eventually created a group called 3D for Better to collect funds for his visors, which he gives away for free. First stop of the day, the hospital. The director welcomes them warmly.
Our healthcare workers said they're really comfortable and very useful. It really gives face protection for nurses or any person in contact with the public. It provides extra safety. I'm very proud of Romeo. His passion led him to do something very positive. It makes sense to see that we can help each other. We changed our minds about staying home and became very active.
Julie said she had orders of thousands of visors, but she hopes that other people or even factories can help. Romeo and his mum have made and delivered 1,800 visors so far. They hope to continue for as long as they can. Reporting by David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and see you tomorrow.